Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. I'm AJ Williams, as you probably already know, but I'm here on the land of the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to extend that to any other Aboriginal listeners that are coming in, and to one of my mates who's our guest today, Darcy Mc-Gauley-Bartlett. How are you?
G'day, my brother. G'day, all. I'd also like to pay my respects to the Dja people of the Kulin Nations. I'm here on beautiful Dja Dja Wurrung Country here in Bendigo, and it's great to see you, my brother. I'm a proud Gunai Kurnai man, and family come from Lake Tyre, so the Montas, Thorpes, Coates, and Camps are my family, and glad to be with you here, brother, on your 101 episode.
Yep, we're going to stop. It's not the 101th, it's the 97th.
Well, then say that then, my brother. You'll edit it out. You'll fix it.
You want to do it again?
Yeah, we'll go again.
Do it.
97th.
Yeah, okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. Before I do start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're coming on from. I'm here in Balwyn Q on the land of the Wurundjeri people. I'd like to pay respect to my elders past, present, and to those young emerging warriors that we're going to help carry us and our culture into the future. Always want to acknowledge them as well. And to any other Aboriginal people who have joined us today, including my mate Darcy, who's joined us today. Darcy.
G'day, my brother, Darcy Mc-Gauley-Bartlett here all. It's third time on the podcast, and happy to be joining you all here from Dja Dja Wurrung Country, and I'd like to pay my respects to the Djara elders past, present, and the strong Djara young people that are emerging in the midst of their beautiful, strong, and courageous elders on this beautiful land. And as AJ said, Darcy Mc-Gauley-Bartlett, proud Gunai Kurnai man, family of the Montas, Thorpes, Coates, and Camps from Lake Tyres.
And Darcy's here for my 97th podcast. Getting close to 100, but we're nearly there.
Almost there.
So we decided to have a bit of a yarn today about fatherhood. And we're both fathers, and just to share some of our experiences. But I might ask Darcy a question first, and that is, tell us a little bit about your kids. I know you.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah, brother. I've got three beautiful little kids, and so I've got my oldest boy Hudson, who's 7, my daughter Addison, who's 5, or just about to be 5, and my little boy Arlo, who is 2. And it's funny, you sit there as a dad and you go, oh, you know, you don't want to stuff parenting up, but I know, like, my beautiful children, they're respectful, they have their manners, but they have their times when they misbehave. And I think my biggest issue is that all three of them are carbon copies of me, and so we all butt heads, something shocking, but they are all about, like, my oldest boy is all about social justice, and you know there's a process and there's a reason for everything. And my daughter, I'd like to pretend it's social justice, but I think it's just demanding and directing, and she's the boss, and nobody can overrule her. And my little boy Arlo, what we say in my house and across the family is Arlo's just Arlo. So he's just himself. He's independent. He'll do his own little thing. He'll come up for a cuddle, then he'll go play, and then he'll just go do his own little thing. And it's interesting. I was reflecting the other day, as I've got 60% custody of my children, is that, and they're with their mother the other part of the time, is that as a father, you could sit there and pass your knowledge on to your kids as much as you want, but they've got to listen, and my kids just don't listen, so that's okay. So they'll listen one day.
Okay, it'll hit them some stage. Didn't Dad tell me that when I was about 5?
Yeah, that's exactly. The current one's the Mugai. I just keep telling them the story of the Mugai, and you know, my youngest boy, he's at that. Oh, sorry, my oldest boy, at that stage of very much of we're trying to encourage, do not use your hands, use your words. And he used his hands the other day, and I said, "Have you heard the story of the Mugai?" And I went through this story, and then my partner, she comes up and says, "The Mugai is not real," and walked off. And I'm like, had to then explain, you know, our customs, our traditions, our dream time stories, and how that all works. And she goes, "Yeah, but don't scare the kid." So, you know, you gotta love it, don't you?
She's worried about you having to pay the therapy bills for the
Uh,
kids later when you've scared the shit out of them.
yeah, that's exactly right. But you know, at the end of the day, we're just trying to keep ourselves in the job, aren't we?
Because you got the book, didn't you? The book that came with the kid.
Yeah, well, I'm still waiting for it, brother. I'm still waiting for it, and the receipt too. Some days.
Yeah.
Uh,
Change policy is not that great when I'm
no,
back.
no, and there's no interest either. Just so you know.
I know. So you were actually quite young when you had your first kid. Uh,
Yeah, I was. So Huddy was born in 2018. I reckon I was. Well, I'm 20 years older than him because I was born in '98. So so 20 years. I was 19 when he was born because he was born in January. So yeah, really young. I was still a trainee Aboriginal health practitioner at the time, so still going to VATCHO to train, working full time, and then trying to be a partner and a dad, and then eventually, what figured out to be a husband and a dad. Because that same year he was 10 months old when I went to Victoria Police. So, yeah, I was really young, and then we had Addison, my ex-wife, and I had Addison. She was born in 2020, so in the midst of COVID. So, and again, I was still very, very young. And then my youngest boy was born in 2023. So, yeah, still, I like to pretend I'm still young, like I'm 27 in August, but I feel really old. Like I feel like the wise old dad. So yeah, yeah.
so in 2025, how do you teach your kids Aboriginal perspectives since not that you've lost them or learnt them? Because my question is that how do you teach Aboriginal kids to be Aboriginal kids in 2025?
It's interesting, isn't it, brother? Because I was speaking to one of the aunties the other week, who's a well-respected public servant and somebody that I adore so much and would be lost without. And I asked her this question: is like, how do we keep our customs and our traditions, and how do we talk? So I've got two books here that we actually have a fire out the back of my place, and every Friday night we sit out there and we have roast marshmallows, and we do 4 Dreamtime stories before they go to bed.
Yeah.
I talked about hunting and gathering with my son the other day, and because my son is a smart aleck like his father, we were sitting at the table eating dinner, and I said, "Please use your fork to eat your noodles." And he goes, "I don't have to, Dad. I'm Aboriginal." I went, "It doesn't work that way, bud. Use your fork." But it is the whole. Hudson turned around and said, "Is our cult?" But because I asked him, I said, what do you think our culture is?" Because he's the whitest black fella you ever meet. He's real pale skin. He's my boomeranger, I call him. And he said to me, he goes, "What's our culture really about, Dad?" And I said, "Well, it's about sharing, it's about love, and it's about respect." That's how I see our culture. And that's for me, it's not only knowing that they've got a safe place to go where they've got heaps of aunties and uncles, whether they're white or black, is that our culture is throughout. And one of my friends, he's just had a baby, and he's a non-Aboriginal fella. He's a disability support worker, and really, really good mate of mine for the last 12 years. And his first biological child, he's been a foster carer for a long time. And I went around there and I brought him a coolamon with a possum skin and a message stick. Now, the message stick had his daughter's name engraved on it as her date of birth, but a message from Uncle Darcy as well, which she can read when she's 18. That's when she'll get it. But it is life is too important to miss it. So like those customs are really big for me at the moment. Is culture's changed from 200 years ago to now. The white fellas stole that, a lot of that from us, and we're still rebuilding. Within my household, it is around love, caring, affection, and sharing. And it's also about being able to tell the stories from my elders, but even also not just our traditional stories. Like I talk about to my oldest boy about the stolen generation and how his Poppy that's still around and his aunties and Auntie Kaki, who he still sees, were stolen and put into Candidia Girls' Home, and what that means, and to talking about our history, but how they've actually fought to get people like, as I say, people like Dad to where he is now, to be able to influence and change perspectives within government and how to try and do things differently. And my son goes, "But Dad, you don't want to do that anymore. You want to have a farm." And it's funny. It's like, well, that's when we talk about land management, bub, is that I want to be able to have my own horse agistment is the plan by the end of 2027. One, because it's a place where people can store their animals, but I can also have a number of animals and run a young kids at risk program and start working similar to what I was doing at Vic Pol around the youth cautioning and case management, is that they can come out to the farm and they can sit with us and they can yarn, and we can actually start doing some healing and rehabilitation and reintegration. And that's when I talk it to my son and my daughter, who's 5, who is a mile a minute, worse than both of us put together, AJ. And she says all she wants to do is help people. So she wants to be a policewoman. And I look at her and I go, you're either going to be a Supreme Court judge or the next female chief commissioner of Victoria Police. And I couldn't be prouder. And my son, he goes, well, I'm sort of going to be like a policeman. I said, well, what do you want to do, Huddy? And he goes, I want to look after animals and look after the land. And for me, you sit there and go, you got my daughter who's wanting to support community within the criminal justice system because she knows it's not about locking up bad guys, it's about helping people. And then you've got my son who wants to look after our country, but also look after the animals, which, not only are our source of food, but also our source of life and nature and healing. So it is a really different way of teaching. But AJ, I think for me, like, you've got a son my age and you've got kids as well, is how do you pass that on as well, brother? Like, that's to ask you that question as well.
Yeah, look, I think it's modernizing it as well. And I've always tried to make fun with culture, not fun at culture.
Yeah.
So, look, as a kid growing up, I did do some hunting and gathering kind of activities with other Aboriginal guys. But I can't do that where I live in Balwyn, for example. No. I can't just walk down the street with a spear. So I have to kind of, take my kids shopping and going, you know what? Let's do some gathering through Coles with our red basket.
Yeah.
Conversations through the vegetable section. And let's go hunting through the meat section. And I can tell you what, it saves a hell of a lot of time.
Doesn't it what?
It's already chopped up for you. But trying to actually get them to explain afterwards, like in 2025, this is exactly this is how we live now. But when we had to go back in time, we have to think about, well, where does the food come from before it gets to the shopping centre? Where does it come to before it actually gets processed somewhere else? Because this is where our people would have had to, hunt for it in itself. And that's where I can explain the history, because they can see how contemporary something is now, but contemporary is only new.
Mm-hmm.
But the older style is something that they have to think about and put back in time. But even reminding people that back in time isn't that long ago.
Like,
no. About, your grandparents and your auntie that's part of the stolen generation. That's stuff that's actually happened in the lifetime of the people still here today.
Yeah.
We're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but we are talking about the time before they were born, if that makes sense. And being 26, my son and my daughter's 22, I don't know, anything older than 30 makes you old.
Doesn't it what, brother? My oldest boy always calls me grandpa. So when I've got my specs on and I'm sitting behind the computer for work, he goes, are you done there, grandpa? Because I sit there with them on my nose and it's like, I'm not that old. But you're right, bruz, and it is in our lifetime. Like, we're talking, well, I was born in 1998, and you think about, well, when was the Bringing Them Home report launched? When was the Aboriginal Justice Agreement finally agreed to? When was the VAF created? These are stuff that's all in my lifetime. We've come so far as a state. I won't say as a nation, but I'll say as a state, with goodwill and commitment. But and what I'm trying to teach the kids now is goodwill and commitment only goes so far. There needs to be action. So and there's also consequences for actions as well. So for example, my son and my daughter know that, if there is a misbehaviour, what's the punishment behind that? Well, that's 5 minutes in the corner, or it's, well, no, you don't get to watch the TV tonight because it's around rewarding behaviour. But we don't reward bad behaviour, but it's also the kids understand that, particularly my oldest boy, who's pretty switched on, is that he understands that as a community, as a culture, we don't lay hands on people. That's not our culture. He had somebody say to him at school that Aboriginal people are just angry, violent people, and that you can't be Aboriginal because you're too nice. Now, like, that's a different kind of racism. The kids don't understand, but from my perspective, I sit there and I look at it and go, well, we've gone from being the dumb drunk alcoholics to now the violent men. And it's like, well, that's when I turn to my son all the time and go, well, we're not violent people. Every morning we get up in the morning here, and it sounds silly, and people can believe it or not, but we get up in the morning and we go, and what house is it today? And the kids go, this is a happy house. And we go, that's exactly right. And there's no yelling. We have conversations, and it's trying to get that. When my daughter doesn't get the yelling part, so my daughter's actually got she's only got 5% hearing in her left ear, I think it is. So yelling is just a part of her day to day. But there are some days, brother, you sit there and go, I know that you've got a disability, and I know that she's got to have another surgery to fix it. But it's like, can you just not yell? I have a migraine. Please just stop. But you make those allowances for the kids. But I think I've got another question that sort of segues from this, Bruz, is because we're talking about generational change, is that you've been a working dad your whole life, and the whole life of kids, and the stigma around being a working dad, and how you can be that generational change within your family. Like, how have you found it hard finding the balance between working and being dad as well?
Yeah, look, I think I've got to an age now, and my kids are old enough to clearly articulate it, that maybe I wasn't around as much as I thought I was. Presently, I was probably there, but because of work and because of the high positions that I held in some national positions, and some state-based kind of positions, that they do remember me a lot of times being on my computer or being on my phone, whereas I thought that I was with them, but I probably wasn't as with them as I should have been.
Yeah.
And it's taken me up until now to actually probably believe them. Not that I didn't believe them when they told me a couple of years ago, but reflecting on it, yeah, I think I could have been a little bit more present in the present.
I feel you, brother, because back my time at Vic Poland, particularly the Department of Justice, so like I obviously at Justice held a pretty significant role for that organisation, and I was on my phone. I was travelling to Melbourne all the time. I wasn't there, and I will stand here and admit that I wasn't there. Now my children are saying, "Dad, you just got to go back to work," because last year I took 4 months long service leave, and I was home and I was around, and now I've been on 2 months leave as well, off on sick leave. And I think the big thing for me, brother, is life sometimes just has to kick you in the head. So for our listeners, I was kicked in the head by for those who are horse people, a 16-1 off the track racehorse, but in other words, a really big bloody racehorse with iron shoes on, which is my partner's horse, which landed me in hospital twice and having a really bad interaction with the health system. But it took that for me to realise that my life could have been done. As the doctor said, it was 2 millimeters to the right hand side, I would have been dead. And I think that for me, where I stood there and went, well, no, the kids and their future's got to be my priority. And as much as the community and working for community has been my life for so long, if I keep giving everything to community and everything to my job, my kids miss out. And one of the lucky things is that the kids don't want to leave dads. They want to be here all the time because, there's rules and there's rules and regulations in dad's house. Like, don't get me wrong, but it is also about making sure that they've got that environment here where community and culture comes first, but love and affection and caring. Like, dad's here, dad's home. And even when I go back to work next week after 2 months off and a bit of recovery, I'm still on significant light duties. But I'll be working from home, so this will be my office. So the kids that don't go to school in kinder will be home with me. And then Huddy will be at school, and then Addie will be at kinder on the days that she goes to kinder. But it's really about investing that time. Like my son, youngest son, when I was working from home, would sit on my lap during a meeting as I'm typing away, doing stuff. And it's learning to multitask and teach as you go. And I think I've really reflected on my time in the last 7 years of being a parent, and you go, what's the last thing that I said? Like when I got kicked in the head, it was, what was the last thing that I said to my children? And I know the last thing I said to them was that Dad loves them, because I sort of tell them all the time, this house is full of love. My new partner, she's still learning about that, because we'll say I love you a million times in a day, and we show so much affection because I didn't get that as a kid. Like my nan was a fantastic person, and love and affection was her thing, but growing up, I didn't get that. So I think for me, and is how do we be that generational change where it is that love and affection and care, and my children will always know that their dad loves them, and I know your children will know until the day that you pass away, my brother, that their dad loves them. We're never going to get it right, because as you said earlier, that book of parenting doesn't come until, usually we're sitting on our deathbed, to be fair. But it's at the end of the day is our community and our kids, like community see us with our kids and they know they're loved. Like the AHLO at Bendigo Health, one of them, she goes, black kids, everyone's kids. That's how it all works. But they all know that my beautiful children are loved up here. So it's the same with yours, brother. Your children know they're loved.
Yeah. And I think too, my kids have been able to learn how to evolve themselves in community. My son is a youth worker. He works at Mullen Mullen Indigenous Gathering Place as a youth worker. And he's the first one to admit that he doesn't know a lot about culture, but he's a little bit like me when I work with the boys at the school, is that my job isn't always to teach them about culture. My job's to introduce them to different aspects of culture.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I'm also learning myself as well, because I'm not an expert. None of us are an expert in everything Aboriginal.
Nope.
And I'm getting speakers that come in and elders to speak in to either tell us stories or show us different activities that might sit outside things that I grew up. We never did kangaroo skin burning, for example, but neither have any of the other Aboriginal kids. So what I got was one of the aunties to come in to show us how to do kangaroo skin burning. And they all kind of loved it, going, because this is not something that's taught in our Pacific culture, but it's learning about all Aboriginal cultures as well.
That's the inclusivity.
And my son is actually providing that opportunity for the young Aboriginal kids at Mullen Mullen by getting facilitators in to teach the kids. But he goes, I'm learning at the same time because stuff they didn't know.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it, brother? Is that, what you don't know, somebody else does, and that's, you should never be ashamed of that. And it's one thing, like even from a work perspective, but even at home, like my kids, like they're my team at home. Like we are a well-oiled machine. But I said, Addison come up to me and said, or Addie come up and said, Dad, what's this Pokemon? And I've got no idea. I never grew up liking Pokemon. I wanted to be a cop. That's all I wanted. So, and then Hudson come out and he had his Pokemon book and he goes, well, Addison, it's this one. And it's like, so, it's being that loving, sharing and being kind. That's our culture, isn't it, brother? It's about, what we don't know, somebody else will. So we bring everyone together to be able to share that. And I think that leads to probably one of my questions for you. Like, I'm just swapping the interview around. I know you'll have questions for me, brother, but I think there's two questions. But one is, if today was your last day, besides your wife and children, what's your proudest achievement? And what do you think your children's proudest achievement would be?
Okay. Oh, except having my kids, not having my kids. I think that was the proudest moment.
Yeah.
I think it was. Oh, this one's a hard one when you ask me. I know I've won a number of awards before, and I think one of the proudest ones was the Victorian University People's Choice Award. And the reason I've chosen that one is that as a kid growing up, in the system, being disconnected from family. I was never anyone's choice.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So to be given the People's Choice Award, and VU told me I won it by like 800 votes or something, a huge amount of that. That was really significant because it's the first time basically in my life that I felt like other people validated the stuff that I do. It's not that I didn't need the validation myself.
Mm-hmm.
They validated the work that I do means something to people. That people walk away from my cultural awareness training or my mental health training or my mentoring program and they go, oh my God, I can make some sort of social impact or social change.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that would be my proudest moment. And it was really hard because I remember when it was recorded, because it was pre-recorded during COVID, I'd already won the Professional Achievement Award. So they came out, I already knew I won that award and I had to keep it secret. And they came and did the recording. And after the recording, they said, and I swear a little bit, as you know.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, there's a couple of F's in there. They go, oh, we need to record something else. And I went, oh, F and hell, what have I done wrong? And they pulled out the Personal Choice Award, People's Choice Award. And they said, you've won the People's Choice Award. And it was just like, why would people vote for me? Why would, and it was like not imposter syndrome, but it was like, do I deserve this award? Do I deserve a People's Choice Award? And to be honest with you, it took me up until, I don't know, even after winning it and watching the recording back to actually go, yeah, I think I do deserve it.
Yeah.
But I think it was I think that's about my proudest moment. Getting married.
Getting married and having kids. I think, brothers, for you, from my perspective, I sit here and I look at you, brother, and I go from when I met you just over a decade ago, because we'll say decade because it makes it sound like you're old. But, over a decade ago from where you were then, you were still winning awards, but you've won a number of since. And I think from a young person who's seen you, and I remember you saying to me, you go, what do you want to do when you're older? And I said, I want to be a cop. And you go, what do you want to do that for? Go and work in health or something. And then I went and worked in health and then went to VicPol and then went to Justice, which I learnt my trade and that's where it's got me where I have. But it's funny, like you sit there and you go, like my proudest moment was being able to sit with you as a peer at the Australian of the Year Awards. Like that, like my proudest moment of you is that we don't need that validation. Well, you don't need that validation. I still do. I'm still looking for it everywhere I go. But I think that, you look at yourself and we could sit there as peers with, Jadeen Muhammad and some beautiful Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in Victoria. You guys as nominees of me as a past winner is that we sat there as peers. For me, it was probably one of the most proudest moments for me and you together is that we've both been nominated for something not many Australians have been, and people like for the Australian of the Year award, for the general one, like people like, and God rest their soul, is like Uncle Jack and Archie Roach, and like really strong leaders and elders. And I think that for my proudest moment of you is that we were sitting there as peers and you were recognised for not only your consultancy work but the significant impact you've had on young people for over a decade and in the mental health space as well. So I think that's my proudest moment of you, brother, in the last 10 years, 11 years, longer. We're old, we're getting there. Yeah.
I want to say my proudest moment, I actually agree with you around that time when you were like, when I first met you, you were 16.
Yeah.
We went out for dinner and you couldn't even drink alcohol because we're in a licensed premise, right?
Yeah.
Lemonade was it. But to actually sit down with you with a beer at the awards ceremony where you're not that young person that I trained, or a bit like if I'm like a mentor and you're like a mentee kind of thing. It wasn't on that level. It was like, as you said, it was the colleague kind of peer level, and we did share something that was quite unique that not many Australians get a chance to actually do, and
Uh,
and having our work recognised and looked at by Australia.
yeah, and it's I still feel like imposter syndrome when it comes to that. Like I think, you know, when it comes to my proudest achievement, brothers, people will think it's this lovely piece of glass behind me. But like much as I said, my children are my thing, but this actually isn't my proudest achievement, believe it or not. And it's I actually the Australian of the Year when I won that actually did a lot of things for me personally, where it took a stance of like, yep, great, people are recognizing what I'm doing, but it's not stopping what the like. Where's it people's support for the action? Um, and it actually like winning the award hurt me in the long run, and I had to make a decision. And I went to a lot of my mentors, including you, going, "Do I accept it? Do I accept it? Do I deserve this?" My actual, besides my children, my proudest one, I'll get it out because it's behind here. No, I'll drop something and bloody break something. But it's this. It's my certificate of service with VicPol, because that for me is the time in my career where I believe that I made the most difference. Like corrections and justice services, I did a lot of work changing the way we do prisoner healthcare. Um, I did a lot of that work on my own. I got a whole team created. I fought with ministers. I fought with, everything there. But operationally, I sit there and I reflect on my time at Victoria Police a lot with a lot of my colleagues who are now ill health retired as well, who are spirits of, their spirits were gone a long time ago, and they're a shell of a person that they are from the time that they spent at VicPol. But my time there was not only eye-opening to the organisation as a whole, and an organisation that I will love forever, regardless of how I was treated in the end, is that our young people got somebody at the police station that actually got them, that would support them through the journey as well, and knew that they weren't just there to be punished. It was there that, nah, Darcy's going to come in and he's going to look after you. He might buy you Hungry Jacks as well. It's and getting our young people home where they belong. That's probably my proudest achievement, bruz, because now even I see the young people that I used to look for as a missing person or go with members to arrest, and um, I had one of them who's now a mental health clinician, and he turned to me and he said, if you didn't treat me with respect in those cells, I don't know where I would have been. And it's like, well, he goes, you changed my perspective on coppers. And in my head, I'm sitting there going, oh, hold that thought. Don't change your perspective too much because they're not all me. But it's also, you sit there and you go, like, it's an organisation that I have forever and always will love. But operationally, I think that's where I made the best and most change, and it's my favourite part of my career. Increasing cautions by 75% to keep our young people out of the justice system. Like, that's a huge achievement and a huge cultural shift for an organisation like a paramilitary organisation. So it's hard, isn't it, brother? But I've got another question for you.
Oh yeah.
I do have another question, and I might even just steal yours. No, I'm kidding. As time goes on, you become Uncle AJ. I think from my perspective, I look at you as an elder for me, regardless of your age. I think that I look at you as a mentor and a guiding influence. As a father, who do you look up to? Because we both were in the child protection system. I look to my nan, and I'm lucky my dad. I've had a really great relationship with my father since I was 12 years old, and I get to look up to him and my pop. But I've also looked up to people like yourself, Bruz, and people that I've worked with across the state. Like one of the white fellas I used to work with, brother Scott Swanwick, and I don't think he'll watch this, but if he did, he'll I'll shout him out. Is I learned how to be a polite and courteous public servant from him. And the public servants that watch this will laugh as well because they're like, well, we haven't seen that for a long time. But I think for me, just to know who you look up to as a male mentor, Bruz, and as a father.
Yeah. Look, it's been interesting because I haven't always had male influences in my life. And even growing up, a lot of my friends didn't have dads as well. They had their mums there. And I fell into two professions that are very female dominated. So my first one was as a nurse, and I did maternal health nursing. And so I had a lot of, again, female in my life. And then social work, which is often female dominated area. So it has been hard for me to actually always have a male role model.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of peers that I admire. I've got a couple of really great mates that I grew up with that are the same age as me, but I would see them as a role model because I think they had their heads screwed on and they picked a goal, and they haven't always made the best decisions all the time, but they're the first ones to admit when they mess something up as well.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that I haven't always tried to follow cultural protocol. And I've been in Melbourne and Wurundjeri country for since I was 19, 20.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's like nearly 30 something years. I have always linked myself and made connections with the local Wurundjeri or Bunurong elders, who, both male and female, who I have found to be quite supportive and endorsive of the work that I do. And they say it's because you do take time to actually sit down with us and listen to our stories as well. And not just to the stories of the Bunurong or the Wurundjeri, but to actually listen to their own personal stories. And as much as they help and guide me and I look up to them, I'm still there when they fall into shit themselves, in terms of when there's been deaths in families, or whether they've had native title things happening. They can ring me and they can talk to me, and they go, that's what a true kind of leader does. It's not just leading in the front, it's kind of leading from the side, or
Yep.
leading the leaders, if that makes sense as well.
You don't always have to be at the front of the pack, my brother, and I think that's I get you there, and that's like, since leaving Justice, I've been on the side, and people will call me and they'll go, "What do we do here?" Even at VicPol, "What do we do here? How do we do this? Can we get some support?" And you give them that guidance to be able to move forward themselves, and to take that, you're not taking a back step. You're there guiding and educating, and I think I agree with you, brothers. Like, as I said, my good mate who's just become a father, my proudest moment was when I watched a shift in him, because both him and I, and we'll have to put a trigger warning, I reckon, at this one, brothers, because like we talked a lot about passing as well. But one of the things that him and I had always lived by is the gun is only a threat if the person you're pointing it at doesn't want to die. That's how we both lived our life, because death didn't scare us. But when I became a father, I was like, well, no, my babies need me. And for him now at 27, becoming a father to a beautiful little girl, that's changed. It is, well, no, I need to be here for my children. I need to be here and provide, and I need to be. And it's, as I said to him, we have our own family dinner every Saturday night. We all come together as a friendship group, and kids usually, we're all there. And it's the whole, you don't just have to provide, you have to be there. You have to listen. You have to guide. You can't direct. You can't be like, you need to do this, you need to do that. You've got to guide your children in the right direction, because we've all been kids before, AJ, and even in workers, and how many times, I don't think you and I either of us are good at doing what we're told. So it's the fact of, how do we guide people in the right direction? That's about parenting. Was the only advice I could give him, was as a young parent for him, was guide. Like, guide and educate and steward. Don't force.
Yeah. And it's good that, my kids are older now. I mentioned Ash before, working in the Mullen, but my daughter's doing third year of occupational therapy at Australian Catholic University, and she hasn't been involved with community very much, only because she hasn't had an opportunity, or I've taken her to events, but she she hasn't been mixing with community really well, but she's just taken on a placement that starts in a couple of weeks at VARS.
Oh, beautiful.
So VARS staff know me
Mm.
personally, but they'll get to know her as her. And
Yes.
my kids have to learn they are not just AJ's kids.
Yep.
They are my son Ash or Giraway and my daughter Gunai, because my business name, people often don't know Giraway Ganyi is named after them. My son's name's Giraway.
Yeah.
Name's Giraway. My daughter's name's Gunai, little echidna. And so they've got to create themselves as Aboriginal community members away from being AJ's my dad.
It's funny, Braz, because that's the thing that I was talking to Jill about the other day, my partner, is I had to create my own name in community because my family up here were clients of the co-op, and they had been clients across Victoria at Aboriginal organisations, but they'd never worked in the organisation. So I had to go, well, like when I introduced myself earlier, it's you say the family name, but mine was Sarah Lillian Monta, who married Arthur Granville Camp, who is Sarah's the daughter of Rachel Thorpe and William Thorpe. And so, coming down that side, people go, well, is he a part of that mob? Is he a part of that family? Because you know how lateral violence works, bros. You delivered that training for years. Is I had to make that name for myself. I had to prove, are you black enough? And as an 18-year-old walking into a co-op, like a young person who, I didn't have my pop, who's a proud Aboriginal man, but has very different views on. It's interesting, as a community, like we all have our own views, and my pop is very faithful to his country, but he's also faithful to his culture, but he can't play that mix. He's a very structured man. He was a prison officer for a very long time and worked tactical operations at Port Phillip and has a very different view of the way of life than I do. And then there's my dad, who was taught culture but grew up in a white house with his mum, who was my nan, who brought me up. But then there's people like my nana Millie, who passed away, who was talking about culture and taught, back when her children were born, so my pop and all that they'd go to this place in Fitzroy, but they never knew what it was, and it wasn't until Arnie Kaki, which is she's the oldest daughter, went to VARS years later, she'd realised that's the place she'd been going for years with her mum. And it was now my kids are, oh, you're Darcy's son, because my son went to the same primary school I went to. I started there in 2004, and he goes to that same school. He goes, oh, you're Darcy's son, or you're Declan's nephew, and those kind of things. And my daughter is very proud of her dad, and she'll tell everyone that who her dad is, and But the thing is that I want my kids to have their own identity and their own culture and their own ability to build it up. And it's a pity the Kesso system isn't like it used to be, because they don't get a lot of cultural activities. Like I asked the school the other week around the cultural support plans, and it's like, well, what cultural activities have you got going on? Oh, we've got this, we've got that. Well, who's running them? Oh, white fellas are. Now, for me, I don't like that. I want my community to run that. But I don't feel that it's my place to step up to do that. But also we don't have the services funded to do it either. It's really hard, isn't it, Bruz? But I know you did have another question for me, Bruz. I reckon you had one more.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you this because I'm watching the time as well. But what do you think's the hardest thing or the biggest challenge you've had being a dad?
I think the hardest time that I've had being a dad was through the separation and divorce of my ex-wife. Now, we're very amicable and we're very respectful to each other because it was a mutual decision. But I think that was how to teach my kids that sometimes two homes are better than one. I think that was the hardest time as being a dad, but it was also trying to find, as I said earlier, that balance between work life and being a dad and being able to be there and sit down and do homework and cook dinner and like now I'm, luckily enough to be in a role where I can come home, cook dinner, help my son with his homework, and go, no, that's not neat enough, or look, try it like this. You don't need to do it cursive. You can just try it like our dad does, and being able to do all that and starting to have that balance now helps. But I think that the separation and divorce of me and my ex-wife was the hardest part because again, it's teaching three really young children that this is a good thing, that like their mother had found another partner and I'd met my partner Jill, and that that it's okay to love another person, and it's okay to want to spend time with mum and dad, and it's okay to like their partner, because sometimes two homes are better than one, and that I'm very lucky my children absolutely adore my partner. I sometimes feel they love her more than they love me. It's a bit, it helps me get a little bit jealous, but it is that bond that they create, and it's my partner, as I say, comes from the racing industry, where it's very much layman's talk, chill out, just relax, like you walk around an 800 kilo beast like it's nothing, but for her, like the love and affection she gives them helps me be able to show that you don't have to have two Christmases. Like we still, my ex-wife and I, and her partner and Jill, we, for the kids' birthdays, we still have conjoint birthdays. And her partner's family come along, my family come along. Jill's family, most of her family live in Switzerland still, and some are in Melbourne, so they don't come. I'm not paying 15 grand for them to fly over here just for the weekend. But it's, it is that, yeah, and I'll say it one more time, is that the two homes are better than one, and that love and balance was the things that I've found really hard being a dad, is that I can tell my children I love them all the time, but it's, do they see that, and how do they feel that, and do they hear that? Not just hear that, but they feel that. So I think that's the hardest thing as a young dad, bruz.
Yeah. Well, I'm just watching the time, and I know that we're running out of time. I want to just ask you, what's one thing you'd like people to walk away with from our yarn today?
I think, bruz, for me is, like, as much as we haven't talked about mental health a lot, is that there's a lot of single dads out there who don't get the credit for what they're doing because it's, we're men, we just get on and we do it. But I think from today's yarn, we talked about being fathers and male influences, and we've talked about culture in 2025 and what that looks like and what our struggles have been and our proudest moments. I think for me, what I'd like for people to take away from this is, call Yarning Safe and Strong or 13 Yarn or Beyond Blue if you're struggling, and it's okay to struggle as a man. I've had a really rough time being able to navigate my mental health and being a father as well, but being a father comes first. And I think that from our conversation today, bros, for people to leave to know it's okay to not be okay and to seek help, whether it's from yourself, whether it's from me, whether it's from anyone else, is to know that it's okay to not be okay and to reach out. And our single dads, like single mums, do it really tough, regardless whether we have partners or not. So, and just remember, sometimes two homes are better than one, and that we as community and as families are there to support each other, and you're never on your own. So I think that's the big thing, brother. It's just that you're never on your own.
Yeah, I'll end with that because I think you summarized what was in my head as well. And I'd like to see more programs for young single dads or young dads in general to know how to be to know how to be a dad, because
Yeah.
culturally it's often seen that rearing kids is a woman's business issue, but as we see in community, there's a lot of young men that are raising kids that don't have those role models to teach them how to actually do that.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's something I would like to see in the future.
I agree, brother, and I think that it's definitely time. There's it's just so men aren't there on their own as well, and we're lucky to have Dadi Manwaro, brother. But I think that we need more programs in regional Vic as well.
Yeah, cool. Well, I want to say thank you for joining me today. You know how much I love you, man.
Nah,
And
love you too, my brother.
we'll always keep talking, and I'll get you on the podcast again in a couple more weeks or a couple of months.
Yeah.
Stay away from the backs of horses.
Oh, I'll try for the moment, brother. The horse has become an addiction. It's the adrenaline.
I did joke with you the other night and said, please bubble wrap yourself so you don't injure yourself for your kids.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Jill went and bought bubble wrap after she's seen that, so it's currently sitting in my garage. I won't be using it, just so everyone knows.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining the podcast, and thanks,
Thanks
Dar.
all. Thanks all. Take it easy.